This is how mixing and mastering is killing your beats, your vibe, your creativity, and your workflow as a music producer. So, a bunch of producers have been hitting me up like, yo, Brahma, I need you to help me with mixing, man. My mixes suck. I need to learn how to master my beats and all of that. And we're going to talk about that in this video. So make sure you watch it all the way through because I'm going to be dropping some dope gems that you could take with you right now and utilize. A couple of techniques and tactics that you don't want to miss out on, okay? Make sure you hit the like button too to show some love and help share this with the algorithm so it can push it to more producers, okay? So sharing is caring, man, and return to good karma. You hit that like button, it's going to really help, right? It's a give and take. The universe is all about that, exchanging energy. So I'm giving you some game. All I ask you to do is like the video, leave a comment if you're really feeling it too. Okay, so check this out, man. Mixing and mastering used to slow me down too as a producer, man. That was something I just couldn't grasp to the point where I even started sending my tracks over to other people to mix for me because I didn't have the confidence, all of that. And it wasn't until I really started studying and practicing things that I learned, asking other engineers questions about mixing certain elements and just the overall beat, how it should sound. And so I started to utilize the knowledge that they gave me. Number one thing you want to keep in mind when it comes to mixing your beats is balance. That's the key word, right? When it comes to mixing, don't think of the term mixing because if you think of mixing, you're going to think of technical stuff by the book. Oh, this needs a compressor, this needs an EQ just because they say it does. No, you want to do it by ear. It's really all about how it sounds. So in knowing what these tools do, don't just put an EQ on something just because you've been told to, or a compressor on something just because you've been told that it needs to be compressed. Some sounds come great as is. They don't need you to do all the over processing, especially if you're using great tools already. There's a lot of tools out there now and these days where the sounds are already compressed or EQ'd to perfection. So you don't want to overdo it. Use your ear first and trust your ear. That is the first step to mixing. And balancing also has to do with leveling, making sure all the levels are good, making sure you're gain staging. That was important. That was something I missed out on for a minute. I didn't understand the concept of gain staging. And it wasn't until I really started realizing that like my track sounded over compressed or certain things just sounded too loud or, not meshing well together. Gain staging is going to save you. I promise you. If you make sure that your inputs are down before you start adding your plugins, you're giving yourself a lot more headroom to work with to make sure that your plugins are really working. Some of you, which I've been there too, all your sounds are already loud, so there's no room for the plugins to work. There's no headroom for the mix to sound clean. That's how you build all of that extra you're squashing the transients when you try to put a compressor on a master fader because everything's super loud already. You want to bring everything down first, right? And then start mixing from there. Give yourself enough headroom to work with so that you can establish the right balance between all of the elements. You don't want everything fighting for space. That walks right into EQing. EQing is the next step in this, which is basically cleaning up the frequencies, cleaning up the sonic space. So that way your bass, for example, the bass and the kick, they can't be fighting with each other. If they're fighting with each other, that's how you're going to get that mud. You want to clean up that mud. That's probably the first thing you want to do. And then on all of your other instruments, make sure you're cutting the low end. There's certain instruments that don't need low end on them, right? If you have like a high pitch lead going in there, it's a West Coast beat, you got the West Coast whistle in there. You don't need all that low end on there because it's going to clutter up the room where the bass and the kick need to sit. You don't want them fighting for space with that. So especially sounds, there's going to be sounds like a hi-hat where if you go in the EQ analyzer, you're not going to realize that there's still low end on that hi-hat because you don't see it. It's not registering. But if I guarantee you, if you turn that sound all the way up inside the EQ, you're going to start to see that low end in there. And some you won't see. It's just there. But to make sure that it's not there, just cut it, right? Cut it from, I'd say, roll off 200 or more, depending on the sound, right? but 200 is usually a great base point for me, as far as like when a sound I know doesn't have a lot of low end energy, I'm going to cut it off right there. So that way it's not competing with the kick in the bass, right? So those things are going to help you glue the mix together. So that's also what the compressor will help do too. If you have a song, the compressor is basically to help you control dynamics. So if you have something that's loud at one point, and then it's quiet at one point, you want to make sure, like if it's like a bass that dips a little too low and then too high at one point, in order to control it and make it sound like it's all at one volume, you want to put a compressor on something like that. But if the sound doesn't have too much dynamics and it's pretty much well maintained and controlled, then you don't need a compressor. I look at a compressor as taming the beast and the EQ as cleaning up the mess, right? So that's what you want to do. Subtractive EQ, which is taking away. You want to cut more than you boost. When I first started engineering, I was always boosting, right? I wanted the bass to be loud. I wanted to make sure that, it was, man, trunk rattling, right? The kick and the bass line, I would just raise up for no reason outside of I wanted it to bump. But when you do that, you're bringing in a lot of mud, especially if you haven't cleaned it up yet. So clean it up first, cut first, and then boost. Only time you want to boost is just to give something more presence, or more expression in the certain frequency, right? You don't want to do that too much. That's the first thing we do though when we start mixing our beats, is we want to boost everything because we think everything should be loud as hell, especially in hip hop music. But cutting is your friend. Do that first before you do any boosting. Back to the compressing though. Tame the beats. You only do that to tame the beats. Like I said, if you have a kick that's pounding and you want it to kind of, or a kick that's not pounding at all, and you want to bring it up, you want to beef it up, that's where the compressor will come in. I'll do that before I even boost in the EQ. I'll compress it so that it gives it that fatness, that warmth, that punch without distorting the sound. Also, it doesn't necessarily always turn the the volume of the sound loud unless you're using the makeup gain. Sometimes you just want to add that compressor. You might mess with the attack and the release and the ratio until you get that perfect punch, right? And then you could use the makeup gain rather than using the fader to turn up the volume. Another thing too is we get too crazy with the faders, man. Boosting stuff up. You could use the compressor to give yourself volume before the fader. I always do that. So that way it's going to eat up the headroom just as well, but not as much as a fader would because I'm boosting the output on it. But anyway, like I said, man, these are just quick tips to help you. I don't want to get too deep into it. I just want to give you some game to help you with your mixing. Mixing is going to be the number one of the most important things when it comes to building your confidence and finally finishing your beats, because sometimes we'll hear a beat and because it's not mixed, we think that it's missing something or it's not finished. Sometimes you got all the right elements in there, but they're fighting with each other. Or sometimes you might have the opposite. You might have not have enough elements in there, but you can't hear it because there's too much mud in there taking up all the space. You can't even hear what to add next. So what I try to do is mix as I go. So mix as you go. So from the jump, I mean, you could do the gain staging later because you want it to be, I know when we making beats, we want it to be loud so that we could really hear what we're doing. But right after you make the beat, get it as far as you can. Even if you haven't added the hook instruments yet, bring everything down just a little bit, even if it's just like -3 dB or 6 dB. Sometimes I gain stage all the way until like -10 dB or more, depending on how loud the sounds are at when I'm making the beat. I'm always looking at the master fader to see how much headroom I ate up. So anyway, you want to get that headroom back, and then finish the beat from there. If you're having a problem with finishing the beat, it could just be that the mix is harming your perception of the beat. You may have ear fatigue because everything was so loud and muddy that you couldn't even hear what goes in there next. So clean it up at that point. Just cut off, the low end on frequencies that don't need it. You can even do that to the low end, cut off the high end to the point where there's, like if it's a bass sound and there's nothing after the the 2 to 20K mark, 2K to 20K mark, you can cut that off. But if you want to do it enough to where it doesn't affect the sound. So test it that way. Same with the cutting on the low end. If it's a hi-hat, I would take it all the way from 20 hertz all the way up until mid-range frequency or low mids like the 500 and see where it's at. Because if I start to see that it's taking the character away, that's when I start drawing it back to 400, maybe 300 and 200. Like I said, 200 is going to usually be the sweet spot because you don't want to cut too much to where you're taking out the character. Another aspect, like I said, about mixing with balancing, is making sure that you're doing a stereo bus effect. So you want to have an EQ on there just to clean it up. You don't want to do too crazy boosts. This is just small cuts and boosts to balance it. A compressor. There's a couple of good compressors out there that you could use to kind of just glue everything together. You don't want to do it to where you're squishing the sound and you're killing the transients. You've heard that before, where you can tell that like it's just pumping too hard and it's losing some of the essence when it hits. You want to do it just enough to where it fattens it up but doesn't take away from it. Everything that you add when you're doing your mixing as far as plugins, you want to make sure that it adds, it doesn't take away. The moment it starts taking away, that's when you take away. You start dialing back, right? I like to test it like that. If something is taking away too much, or I might drive it all the way to the extreme to where it takes away a lot, and then I start chopping back on it so that way I can find the balance of where I need it to sit, whether that's an EQ or a compressor, right? Or a reverb or a delay. But the key thing to mixing is you got to look at it like beat making. If there's anything you take away from this video, take this part of it away. Is when you're making beats from a technical aspect, it's not very fun, right? Same thing with mixing. You want to go with the flow. You want to trust your ear and see what your ear is telling you, but make it a creative process. Look at it as sculpting the sound. Same thing when you're twisting resonance and cutoff on the synthesizer. It's basically, in essence, the same kind of thing. You're playing with the frequency of the sound, the low end and the high end, where the frequency is sitting at. So anyway, if you take anything away, it's looking at mixing as a creative process, just like you do with beat making. Have fun with it. Have fun with it, man. Look at all these things as ways to help you balance and scope your sound. That's what it is. It's art. If you're an artist, you know about drawing. It's the same way. You're just drawing in sound, whether you're making the beat or you're mixing the beat. One thing about mastering too, let me touch on that. Mastering, don't worry about mastering when beat making, because if you look at it this way, this is how I see it. The artist that's going to buy the beat from me anyway, they're going to get it mastered as a whole song. If I master it, the beat by itself, then I'm already eating up the headroom. So when the artist gets the track, the artist is going to have to record on it and then get it mastered again. It's like overcooking something. I don't want to overcook it, so I want to mix it just enough to where there's still dynamics involved and it's loud enough, but it's not eating up all the headroom and it's not already super compressed by the time it gets to the artist. So don't worry about mastering your beats in order to put them out for sale. The only time you would worry about or even think about or consider mastering the track is if it's a full song already and it's your artist that you're working with. Then you want to get it ready for mastering and send it out for mastering, or you could learn how to master yourself. But I wouldn't worry about mastering at all at the level of making the beat, mixing it, and putting it up for sale. It doesn't need to be mastered before you sell it. I never sell a beat mastered already, because the artist is going to get it mastered once they get the song completed. You don't want to have it to where they have to master it twice. It doesn't make sense. So anyway, that's it. I didn't want to take up too much of your time. I just wanted to give you some pointers on how you could make your mixes sound better without being too technical. And just drop a few gems in here, and I hope they help. Like I said, hit the like button, leave a comment, let me know if this video helps you. This is the first of many videos to come. I'm doing these videos based on the email replies and responses I got. So there's going to be, if you sent me an email and I didn't tackle the issue that you're having in this one, it may be the next video or the video after that, because I didn't want to condense these all into one video, because that way it would be either extra long or didn't have enough value. So I'm taking it piece by piece. The one that stuck out the most, people were talking about mixing and mastering. Make sure this video, make sure you like it and leave a comment. I want to make sure I gave you enough value. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comments. I'm going to be looking at the comments too, to be able to do more videos to address some of the issues you guys have been having. If there's certain questions I didn't answer in this video, leave it in the comments so I can go do another video and go deeper on it. Apeshit plugins, make sure you grab Apeshit plugins. There's always a deal going on the site right now. Go check it out. If you're not using Apeshit plugins, you definitely want to. They help make your mixing easier. The reason why or how they do it is because most of the sounds in the Apeshit plugins have been ran through the SSL compressor. SSL mixer, where compressors and EQs were already applied to it. These sounds are processed. By the time they get to you, you don't have to do too much mixing. They've already been done. You may have to cut and boost certain signals if, because it's all about flavoring. It's just like a chef cooking up. He might want to add an extra salt and pepper to a dish that that is not to his taste. The same way with the sounds, but as far as clarity and them being clean, you get them already ready, okay, right out the box. So Apeshit plugins, apeshit808.com, check it out. And also, I'll be doing more of these videos inside the Ape Army, which I'm going to tell you more about as we go along, okay? So look out for that. Peace, love, and peace.